People talk about toxic love like it's obvious, loud, and easy to escape. But the truth is, it usually sneaks in quietly, disguised as loyalty, patience, and hope. I didn't wake up one day knowing I was being betrayed. I woke up believing I was committed, understanding, and strong for staying. That's how these stories start. You convince yourself that love means endurance. You ignore the small warnings because you're invested in the future you plan together. My story isn't about rage or drama at first. It's about the slow unraveling of trust, the moments your body knows before your mind accepts it, and the night everything finally made sense. If you've ever questioned your instincts or stayed silent to keep the peace, this story might feel uncomfortably familiar. I used to think toxic love was just a phrase people threw around online, something dramatic that didn't apply to real adults with jobs, responsibilities, and shared bills. Mark and I had been together for 6 years, long enough to feel permanent. We lived in a modest townhouse outside Atlanta, the kind with thin walls and creaky stairs, but it felt like home because we built routines there. Sunday grocery trips, weeknight dinners on the couch, arguments about laundry that always ended in laughter. I told myself this was what stability looked like. But somewhere along the way, that comfort turned into tension I couldn't explain. It started subtly. Mark became protective of his phone in a way that felt unnatural. He used to leave it anywhere, but suddenly it never left his pocket. If I reached for it to check the time, he'd flinch. What? He'd snap, then soften his tone like nothing happened. I noticed he started working late more often. Deadlines, he said, you know how it is. I nodded, even though his job never demanded those hours before. One night I asked, do you want dinner when you get home? He replied, don't wait up, I'll grab something. That stung more than it should have. We used to eat together no matter how late it was. When I tried to talk about the distance, he turned defensive. Why are you always questioning me? He said. Can't you just trust me? I do trust you, I replied quickly, even though my chest felt tight saying it. He sighed, you're making problems where there aren't any, so I stopped asking. I told myself relationships go through phases. Stress does strange things to people. Love means patience. Still, my body reacted before my mind did. I slept lightly. I replayed conversations. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. The night that changed everything felt ordinary at first. I was folding laundry in the living room, the TV playing softly in the background. Mark had just stepped into the shower. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced over without thinking. A name I didn't recognize lit up the screen, followed by a red heart emoji. My stomach dropped. I stared at the phone like it might explain itself. I didn't pick it up. I told myself it could be anyone, a coworker, a cousin, someone harmless, but my hands were shaking. When Mark walked back into the room, I forced a smile. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, just tired. He picked up his phone, checked the screen, and turned it face down without a word. Over the next week, the signs stacked up faster. He started going to the gym at odd hours. He laughed at texts but wouldn't share what was funny. He canceled plans last minute. When I asked why, he said, do I need permission now? One morning, I tried again. I feel like we're drifting, I said carefully. He scoffed, you're overthinking. Not everything is about you. That sentence sat heavy in my chest. I stopped bringing things up after that. Instead, I watched, I listened. I noticed how he angled his phone away from me, how he left the room to take calls, how his affection felt forced, like a performance he forgot his lines to. The real break came on a quiet Sunday morning. Mark had left early, saying he needed to meet a friend. I was cleaning the living room when I noticed his old tablet half hidden under the couch. I remembered he stopped using it months ago. Curious, I picked it up. The screen lit instantly. No password, no logout. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I sat down slowly like the floor might give out under me. My finger hovered over the screen. I knew that once I opened it, there was no going back. Part of me wanted to put it back and pretend I never saw it. But another part, the part that hadn't slept peacefully in months, needed the truth. I opened the messages. What I saw didn't feel real at first. Names blurred together, dates jumped out at me. Words like miss you and last night burned into my eyes. I scrolled in silence, my breathing shallow. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this wasn't innocent. This can't be happening, I whispered to the empty room. I checked the calendar. There were entries marked with vague notes, times that lined up with his late nights. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen, someone I barely recognized. I felt stupid for trusting so easily, angry at myself for ignoring my instincts. When Mark came home later that afternoon, I was sitting on the couch, the tablet hidden beside me. Hey, he said casually. What's wrong? I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized the man I loved had been living a life I knew nothing about. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Not yet, because once I spoke, everything would change and I wasn't ready for what came next. The tablet felt heavier in my hands than it had the night before, though nothing had changed except the weight of the truth. I spent hours scrolling through messages, each one a stab to the chest. Her name was Lauren. She wasn't a stranger passing through, and this wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been going on for months. Every playful text, every photo, every inside joke, it all pointed to a life Mark had built parallel to ours, a life I never knew existed. There were screenshots of dinners, notes about weekend plans, even subtle complaints about me that stung far deeper than any betrayal of the body ever could. I felt foolish for trusting him, for ignoring the red flags, for believing his apologies would never need to exist. And yet, oddly, I felt calm. I had clarity for the first time in weeks. I knew I couldn't confront him blindly. I began documenting everything. Screenshots, dates, times, little details that would be undeniable proof. I made a hidden folder on the tablet and copied everything. Each screenshot strengthened my resolve, giving me a sense of control I hadn't felt since the first time I noticed his unusual behavior. My mind raced with questions, but I reminded myself, patience was my weapon. Confronting him without evidence would be foolish. I wanted truth, and truth had to be undeniable. The next evening, I asked him to sit with me on the couch. "Mark," I began, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk." He looked up from his phone, frowning. "About what?" "I found something," I said, showing him the tablet. "I need you to be honest." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk forming. "Found what, you snooped?" "Come on, we've been together 6 years. This isn't about snooping, this is about us," I said. "These messages, who is Lauren?" He chuckled nervously. "Lauren, she's just a friend." "Don't be dramatic." I opened the first message thread and let him read silently while I watched. His face paled, but then he laughed weakly. "Okay, I'll admit it, but it's not what you think." "We weren't serious." "Not serious?" I asked, holding back a laugh of disbelief. "You call this not serious?" I tapped on the dates, the photos, the plans. "Do you see how long this has been going on?" He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Then why did you let it?" I asked, voice low but unwavering. "Distance, stress, you know I love you," he said, fumbling for the right words. I shook my head. "Love isn't a free pass to betray." "Do you even understand what you've done?" He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "I messed up, I swear I'll fix it." "Fix it?" I repeated bitterly. "You think apologies erase months of lying? Months of hiding your life from me? I need a chance," he begged. "Please don't throw everything away, I'll end it with her." "It's over." I studied him, trying to measure sincerity against habitual excuses. "Mark, how long did you think I wouldn't notice? How long before you thought this would just disappear?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I wasn't thinking." "You weren't thinking?" I repeated, my jaw tight. "You weren't thinking about me, about us." "About our life." He reached for my hand. "Please just trust me." I pulled away. Trust is built on truth, Mark. Truth you've been hiding for months." "I swear it's over with her." "I'll prove it," he said, desperation in his voice. I nodded slowly, the wheels in my head already turning. "We'll see." We sat in silence after that, the kind that wasn't peaceful but charged, like a storm gathering. I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was a pattern. Control, manipulation, denial. The affair with Lauren was a symptom, not the disease. I needed to plan, to think carefully. Reacting in the moment would give him the power to spin the story his way. I wasn't going to let him. Later, when he left for work the next day, I called my friend Marissa, who had been quietly supportive of me for years. "I need advice," I admitted. "I found everything. Screenshots, dates, messages, the whole thing. I don't know what to do next." Marissa was quiet for a moment. "You want revenge?" she asked carefully. "Not revenge like ruin, just truth, exposure." "Closure," I said. She sighed. "Then you need a plan. Don't let emotions guide you, be precise." "I've already started," I admitted, feeling a flicker of strength. "I'm saving everything. Every message, every note. I want him to have no escape, not this time." "You're smart," she said. "Don't confront him without having everything in place. Let him stumble on his own mistakes. That's when karma hits hardest." We made plans for me to catalog everything, cross-check dates, and figure out the best way to confront him without it blowing back on me. I didn't tell Mark about the depth of my preparations. I let him believe I was still reeling, vulnerable. Every lie he told, every excuse he made, became more fuel for the plan I was quietly building. That evening, Mark came home looking tired, expecting me to collapse into tears or beg for forgiveness. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, calm, notebook open. "Working on something?" he asked cautiously. "Just making notes," I said. "You know, for us, for clarity." He glanced over my shoulder. "Okay, makes sense." I kept my eyes down, pretending to write, though my mind raced. This was no longer just about catching him. This was about reclaiming my life, my self-respect. Every screenshot, every calendar entry, every hidden photo would serve as proof that his words were meaningless. A few days later, I decided to test the waters. Mark, why don't you tell me about your day? I asked casually at dinner. He shrugged. Work was fine, nothing exciting. I pressed gently. Did you meet anyone new today? Any colleagues? He laughed. Just normal stuff, you know me, nothing scandalous. I nodded, smiling softly. Good, I like that about you. Later that night, I whispered to myself, not everything is what it seems. Not anymore. Mark, blissfully unaware, thought he was safe, that he could return to routine and pretend nothing had happened. But I had already seen the truth, I had catalogued it. And now I was ready for the moment when all the lies would crumble around him. As I closed the tablet, I realized the hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was holding my tongue, watching him live in comfort while I carried the weight of his secrets. But patience, I reminded myself, was my ally. I wouldn't let him rewrite the narrative this time. I wouldn't give him another chance to spin excuses or guilt me into forgiveness. Not now. That night I stayed awake in our bedroom, pretending to read while replaying every detail I had discovered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My life had been infiltrated by a stranger I didn't know, someone who had crept into my home, my relationship, my life under my nose. And Mark, my partner, the man I loved and trusted, had facilitated it. By the time morning came, I had a clear plan forming in my mind. It wasn't impulsive and it wasn't emotional. It was methodical, precise, and carefully plotted. Every conversation, every screenshot, every lie would be used strategically. He would have no escape. He would feel the weight of his actions, but I would remain untouchable, untangled from the chaos he created. I whispered into the empty room, "This is the last time you get to control the story, Mark. The last time you get to hide behind excuses." And as I watched him leave for work the next day, smiling like the world hadn't changed, I knew one thing with certainty: the truth would come for him. And I would be ready. The storm was gathering, silent but inevitable, and I was at its center, calm and prepared, holding the proof he never expected me to have. That night I sat by the window, watching the city lights, and smiled faintly, because this time I wasn't just the betrayed, I was the architect of what came next, and he had no idea. I told Mark I needed time, and the relief on his face told me everything I needed to know. He mistook my silence for weakness, for confusion, for the kind of woman who would eventually forgive just to keep the peace. I let him believe that version of me existed. I stopped asking questions. I stopped checking his phone. I nodded when he said things like, "We're going to get past this, and you'll see I'm serious this time." Inside, though, I was moving quietly, carefully, like someone learning the exits in a burning building. I wasn't planning revenge fueled by anger. I was planning clarity, exposure, and consequences he couldn't dodge. I reached out to Nina first, a mutual friend who worked in HR at Mark's company. We met for coffee on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. "I need to ask you something hypothetically," I said, wrapping my hands around my mug. Nina raised an eyebrow. "Hypothetical usually means messy," I exhaled. "What happens if two coworkers are in a secret relationship and one of them lies about it?" She didn't answer right away. "That depends. Is there dishonesty, power imbalance?" "There's a lot of dishonesty," I said quietly. Nina nodded slowly. "Then it usually doesn't end well." That was all I needed to hear. I didn't tell her names. I didn't have to. The next call I made was harder. I messaged Lauren. My hands shook as I typed, but I kept my tone calm and direct. I wrote, "I think we need to talk." "There are things Mark didn't tell you," she replied an hour later. "Who is this?" I answered. "The woman he's been living with for 6 years. We met at a quiet cafe downtown." Lauren looked nothing like the villain I'd imagined. She looked confused, nervous, human. "He told me he was single," she said immediately, eyes wide. "He said you were his ex." I slid my phone across the table and let her scroll, her face drained of color. "He said you were controlling," she whispered. "That you made him miserable." I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "He said the same thing about you to me. That you were just someone who didn't matter." Lauren swallowed hard. "So none of it was real." "Not the way he told it," I said. She nodded slowly. "I'm done. I won't be part of this." That was when the twist revealed itself. Lauren leaned forward and lowered her voice. "There's something you should know. He didn't just lie to us. He's been telling people at work that you moved out months ago." My stomach dropped. "What?" "He said it made things easier," she said. "So no one would ask questions." In that moment, I realized this wasn't damage control. This was reputation management. Mark hadn't just cheated. He'd erased me socially before I even knew I was being replaced. I went home and looked at him differently. That night he said, "You've been quiet lately." "I'm thinking," I replied. "About us?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "about everything." He smiled, convinced he was winning. I planned the gathering carefully. I called it a milestone night, an excuse to bring our closest friends together. "Just something small," I told them. "I want us all in one place." Privately, I sent screenshots to the ones who mattered most. "Please come," I wrote, "but come informed." The night arrived wrapped in false normalcy. Music played softly, glasses clinked, Mark laughed too loudly. "You okay?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "I'm fine," I said, standing up. Everyone settled into the living room. My heart pounded. I held my phone tightly. "I need to say something," I began. Mark looked confused, then uneasy. "There's a truth that's been hidden and I won't carry it alone anymore." Silence fell. I met his eyes. "Mark, this is where it ends." And as I unlocked my phone, I knew there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, feeling every eye in the room on me. The hum of polite conversation faded as I began. "I've stayed silent long enough," I said, my voice steady. "Mark has been living a double life. For months, he's lied, hidden, and betrayed everyone in this room." I tapped my phone, and the first screenshot appeared on the TV screen we'd connected. Faces shifted from curiosity to shock. My closest friends gasped, covering their mouths, leaning in closer. "Lauren," I said, glancing toward the doorway, "this is the truth you were never told." Moments later, she arrived, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. Having pieced things together from our previous conversation, she stood beside me, quietly supportive, and for the first time I felt the weight of my courage become something real. Mark's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. "Wait, this isn't how it looks," he stammered. "I know, Mark," I interrupted firmly, "this is exactly how it looks. And now everyone can see it too." I went through the messages slowly, letting each one land. Conversations, plans, excuses, and lies. "See this?" I said, pointing to a string of texts. "These aren't just words, these are months of betrayal." He tried to interrupt. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "That you erased me from your life while building a secret one. That you treated two women as if we were disposable. There's nothing left to explain, Mark. The truth speaks louder than anything you say." Lauren shook her head at him. "I can't believe you lied to both of us," she said, voice trembling. All this time, Mark looked around the room at our friends, at the evidence projected for everyone to see. The silence was deafening. No excuses, no words, no defense could undo what had been done. I realized then that revenge didn't need theatrics. It didn't need anger or humiliation. The truth itself was heavier than any insult I could deliver. Weeks passed after that night. Mark faced consequences at work for policy violations. Friendships he thought were secure fractured, and the weight of the trust he'd broken followed him everywhere. I moved out of our townhouse, lighter than I'd felt in years, breathing freely for the first time in a long while. Each step I took felt purposeful, a reclamation of space, life, and self-worth. The toxic love I had clung to had taught me a lesson I could never unlearn. Ignoring instincts only protects betrayal. Speaking up, standing firm, and claiming the truth are the acts that set you free. Karma didn't need fireworks. It was quiet, steady, and inevitable. It came in the form of exposure, consequences, and the realization that dishonesty cannot survive in the light. Walking away wasn't losing. It was choosing myself, prioritizing my sanity and integrity over a life built on lies. And in that choice, I found closure, freedom, and a clarity that no betrayal could ever take from me. The past remained behind me, and the future was mine to shape, unburdened and whole. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Toxic love can creep in quietly, disguise itself as loyalty, and make you question your own instincts, but the truth always finds a way to surface. What I learned is simple but powerful. Staying silent may feel safe, but speaking up with clarity and evidence is what truly sets you free. Karma doesn't need to be dramatic. It comes quietly, steadily, and with perfect timing. Walking away from betrayal isn't losing, it's reclaiming yourself and your peace. If this story resonated with you, remember to trust your instincts, value your worth, and never let anyone rewrite your story. Life moves forward, and the freedom you claim after betrayal can be more beautiful than the love you lost.